For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Go on, Ezzy. Finish your story.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba.
The saga of your new hat continue. We're all very interested.
I'm very excited about my new hat, actually. I love it. It's a vintage Blue Jays hat. And how's it going? Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Let's go.
You went to look for a Devils hat. Keep going. And then why couldn't you buy a Devils hat, Ezzy?
I couldn't find a good Devils hat, so I bought a Blue Jays hat. And I like it.
There was more to the story, Dave. Dave can vouch for me that there was more. Dave's giving a thumbs down. He's not going to do it. Fine. I was looking to bring a little levity to the start of the show, but you guys won't play along with me. Nonetheless, I will say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live on our social media platforms, wherever you may be, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here for the next couple hours, talking about the Winnipeg Jets, talking about old school Toronto Blue Jays hats, and Ezzy's saga to find a Devils hat that fits his noggin. We're going to be joined by Murat Atesh at the bottom of the hour, Michael Trakos in hour number 2. Whatever you just said, Ezzy, you're muted, so I couldn't quite hear you. But nonetheless,
no, all I was going to say is the reason why I couldn't get a Devils hat at Lids is because they only had snapbacks, and most snapbacks are not big enough for my fat head. So that's why I ended up going with a fitted Jays hat.
What size is that fitted Jays hat that a snapback couldn't be adjusted enough to fit it?
I don't know. I'm 7 7/8, so
it's a big head. He's got a big noggin there, folks. A lot of brains in that noggin. It's got to fill up. So that makes the sense there. So if you're looking to buy Ezzy a gift, do not buy him a snapback hat because it does not fit his head. But that doesn't look like a flat brim to me. It's got a bit of a curve to it. Am I right there?
Yeah, I don't curve my hats that much. I curved it a little bit, but
okay. And we know Dave's very passionate about not rocking a flat brim hat. That's been a long time. Would it be a complaint of yours or just a long time preference of yours? I suppose that you don't wear the flat brim hat.
Not a complaint. I'm open to people having their own preferences. I just choose to wear 3930s, not the 5950 style. So I'm a curve guy. I'm a curve guy through and through.
You're a curve guy through and through. Exactly right. Whether it be covering development camp for the Winnipeg Jets or curving the brim of your hat, you're a curve guy through and through. Let's get talking about the Winnipeg Jets on this Saturday morning. We start with free agency because when we signed off last Saturday, that was the start of free agency. And the Winnipeg Jets were, I would say, typically active in free agency, their usual amount of activity. They were not the most active team in the NHL, as no one would ever expect them to be, but they did make a couple of moves. The primary one I would say being getting Laurent Brossoit back, presumably to be the backup goaltender to his good friend Connor Hellebuyck. He returns from the Vegas Golden Knights on a 1-year deal worth $1.75 million. In addition, they re-sign Vlad Namestnikov to a 2-year contract. He gets 2 years, $4 million, $2 million per year is the salary cap hit there as he's waiving. And then a couple days later, they sign Axel Jonsson-Fjällby to a 2-year contract, which is a 2-way deal for the first year and then a 1-way deal in the second year. He's going to make $775,000 at the NHL level. With all due respect to Jeff Veal, we're probably not going to spend a lot of time on that signing because if he's in the Jets lineup, things have probably gone a little bit haywire, in terms of the season. But also you can't not mention that Artemi Niazev, am I getting it right? Anybody know the correct pronunciation? I'm going to go with Niazev. Comes over from the San Jose Sharks in exchange for Leon Gawanke, who everyone thought was going to be in Germany, but Leon Gawanke is in fact going to be in San Jose. As Dave speculated, he had an out in his 4-year deal with Mannheim in Germany. So that's sort of the summary of the moves that the Jets have made so far,
I would
there
throw
be-
in signing Colin Delia as well.
Yeah, sorry, Colin Delia as well, because I think there's a domino effect to the Brossoit and Delia signings that we'll get into. But I guess I would say to you guys, compared to, given the moves the Jets have made this offseason, the signings, the acquisitions, the trades, the departures, is this team further ahead than where they were at the end of last season, in your estimation?
Well, it's so hard to say right now, right? Because we expect probably, at least a few more moves, right? Like I think, there's some question marks about the fourth line, but no, I wouldn't say that the Jets are significantly better. I think that, when you consider the totality of trading Pierre-Luc Dubois to the LA Kings and then getting 3 roster players, obviously with Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo being, the 2 guys that you expect to be in the top 9 for the Jets. And then Vlad Nemestikov, I think, is an interesting signing because, it gives you options on your second and third lines, right? Like he's your kind of prototypical middle 6 guy that can play center or wing. But I think something that not a lot of people are talking about is there have been 0 moves on defense, right? And this wasn't exactly the Carolina Hurricanes last year. And, that's why, to me, this Jets team, I think, can compete for a playoff spot. There's no doubt about that. But I don't know how you can possibly say that this Jets team, based on the moves that they've made, whether it's the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, whether it's, signing Vlad Nemestikov. Look, I think Laurent Brossoit is an upgrade on David Rittich. I like that signing a lot. I don't think, Laurent Brossoit is going to play 40 games or anything like that. I think if Connor Hellebuck is the starting goalie, most likely he's going to be in that 55 to 65 game range. And Laurent Brossoit is fine with that, right? He played that role for 2 years with the Jets as the backup goalie. So I like the Axel Jonsson-Fjällby signing. If you go back, I guess, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, we were talking about which Jets RFAs we would like to see back or pending UFAs. And I mentioned that I thought Axel Jonsson-Fjällby is a guy, that has a purpose on this team. I think, he can be a guy that plays on the fourth line. He can play that 13th forward role. He can give you some energy on the fourth line. Now, are the Jets looking at bringing in a veteran, to play center on the fourth line? I'm not sure. I think David Gustafsson is a guy who obviously has a high ceiling. He didn't score a goal last year. He didn't provide a lot of offense. He was a healthy scratch for a little bit. So he's obviously, an option there on the fourth line, as is Rasmus Kupari, right? Kupari is a guy that can play center. He can play wing. So I think I like the moves. Colin Delia is a guy that obviously Dave knows the goaltending situation. I mean, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that the Moose go in with Oskari Salminen and Colin Delia, and then Thomas Milic plays in the ECHL. I'm not sure, who that will be for. I would assume Milic doesn't just go right into the AHL. Maybe Milic, plays a game or 2 or 3 in the AHL level, but I assume he starts at the ECHL level. So Colin Delia is a guy that Dave knows has a lot of AHL experience, and I imagine he'll split the games with Oskari Salminen, or at the very least, he'll play 20 to 30 games. So I like the moves, but when I look at this Jets team, I still see a team that has some flaws, right? Like the high-end talent up front has suffered a little bit when you move Pierre-Luc Dubois and buy out Blake Wheeler, even though I think Gabe Vilardi and Alex Iafallo will fit in nicely, whether that's give Vilardi up the middle and Iafallo on the wing with Adam Lowry and Morgan Barron, and then maybe that bumps Mason Appleton down to the fourth line. So your fourth line is, as it stands now, could be Jonsson-Fjällby, Kupari, Appleton, something like that. And then obviously David Gustafsson is an option there, but I think I've liked the moves, but I'm not, prepared to say, this Jets team is significantly better and now they're a top 3 team in the West.
No, I would agree with your assessment there, Ezzy. If you look at, from my perspective, you look at this Jets team, and I think they're still probably similar to what they were last year. I would say that they're likely, if you that their ceiling right now to me would be probably wild card team, maybe 3rd spot in the Central Division. They have better depth, but as you said, they don't have the same level of top talent to compete with the real big boys, in the NHL. They're sort of a little bit in the mushy middle, but maybe the mushy middle plus, Dave, not necessarily the mushy middle minus, which is really where you definitely don't want to be, but you're still not, you're not citing the Jets as a Stanley Cup contender based on their current lineup by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I mean, I think, again, as he talked about it, one thing this team was lacking last year was depth. So you've added depth, but it came at the expense of that, 1-2 punch in Scheifele and Dubois. So, I mean, you're going to take a hit there, but it's a question, I guess, of the sum of all parts. Is that going to help you? And, some folks think that Rasmus Kupari could be a real nice addition to that fourth line and provide, fourth line center and move Gus into the wing. And, we'll see what happens there. But I agree with that. It's always hard. It's like declaring winners and losers of a trade. This team won. It's like, no, you'll know that in 3 years. It's the same as drafts. I mean, guys, I've been at, the development camp all week. And so many people were, oh, this guy's a bust. This guy was and it's like, I have literally no idea. I'm watching guys who were drafted 2 or 3 years ago, and we're still wondering, what is their ceiling going to be? What are they going to look like in the NHL? And I'm thinking to myself, so, whether it's Elias Salamonson or, Anton Johannesson, any of these guys who are overseas, you don't have any clue. We're not watching them regularly. I don't watch the Swedish Hockey League or the junior leagues in Sweden to be able to give you a proper assessment as to the development of these
Nobody
players.
does, Dave.
No, I know, but I'm saying
unless you're an amateur scout or a pro scout for an NHL team, or you work in the scouting business, nobody's watching the Swedish Elite League on a regular basis, right?
I'm pretty sure Dave was watching the Swedish Elite League during COVID, though, wasn't he? Clipping,
I may have clipped some things.
Swedish hockey highlights.
The what's it called? I can't pronounce the name, but the second
Blast or something like that.
No, it's like I can't pronounce it, but. Anyways, the point is, and you might be right, but anyways, the point is that was when there was less hockey over here or something like that I had to do. I'm just saying that I agree with that. It's always very hard to assess. I think that you do need the depth, because too often if the Jets had an injury, they didn't have anybody to fill it, and it was always going to be a problem for this team. Whereas now you have guys who can fill. And look, clearly based on Kevin Cheveldayoff's commentary on Saturday afternoon after our show last week, the fact of the matter is this organization is expecting big things from Cole Perfetti. Mm-hmm. And it's time for Cole Perfetti to step up. I mean, here's his opportunity. And we always talk, that's a word, the O word that we tend to use, whether it's with the Moose or the Jets or whichever organization we're talking about.
It's because our wives and significant girlfriends don't use the O word ever with us.
Anywho, the point is, this is a family show. The point is that we're talking about opportunity.
I'm known as Dr. Love.
Okay. Well, anywho, the point is that the opportunity
I always
is now
perform at the highest level, Drew.
I'm sure you do. Go ahead.
1 minute, man.
Yeah, I was like, boy,
now, Dave.
Holy moly, I get 5 seconds to talk, and you guys are filibustering me. The point is that I think that the opportunity is there for Cole Perfetti to step up, and it's a big ask. It's a big ask for a guy like Perfetti, who hasn't been playing center at the NHL level, to step up and become a center, or for Gabe Vilardi, who I actually think Gabe Vilardi could step in and perform. I mean, his numbers were very similar to Pierre-Luc Dubois. His defense is vastly superior to Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it sounds like it's because of tough love, right? As he got tough love in LA, and he basically was like, he came in as a center. He wasn't good defensively as a center. They moved him to wing, but they literally told him, you're not playing well. Like he got yelled at, and it reinforced that he needed to play better defense. So yeah, I mean, look, I think what you're going to do is you're going to have that opportunity for guys like Vilardi or Perfetti to step up. And if they seize that mantle, too many years, guys, if you think about it, guys have been put in the way. There's been roadblocks of your young centers to be able to come in and take a role. Here's a chance for a young center to come in and take a role. I think it's an opportunity, and I don't think it's something that we can anticipate or to say what kind of level of success it's going to have.
Dave, this is something we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. It's something we're going to be talking about in September. And I think you're talking about goals when you're talking about Vilardi, because Vilardi had 41 points and Dubois had 63 points. So the Jets are expecting more offense out of Vilardi, and I think they're going to get it. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's either Gabe Vilardi up the middle on the second line, assuming Scheifele's obviously staying as the first line center, or it's Cole Perfetti. And yes, Cole Perfetti, he's had some injury problems over the last few years. So obviously, you want him to stay healthy for the majority of the season, but you also want every player on your team to stay healthy for the majority of the season. So Cole Perfetti, I think in, whatever it was, 50 games last year, he was having a good season. And then we know what happened. It was an unfortunate situation. And, even though he's young, I think, we know that he has the first round pedigree. He's a guy that is obviously a very smart, intelligent player, holds onto the puck. We've seen his vision, right, Dave? Like, he's a guy that, can shoot the puck just as well as he can set up other players, right? So I'm not as concerned about the second line center role as some other people. But I think, when you're looking at this Jets team, you have to look at it as a whole, not just second line center, not just second line wing, third line wing. You have to look at it as a whole, and you have to be a good defensive team. And that to me is something that, again, maybe it's because I played defense and I'm a fan of the Devils teams that won the cups back in the early 2000s. But like, this Jets team is going to have to be much better as a team defensively in front of Connor Hellebuyck. This is something that has been going on years. They've been too reliant on Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, let's be honest. Hellebuyck had to basically, stand on his head at the end of the season in order for the Jets to make the playoffs in the first place, right? And this is the same group of defensemen. So I think Dylan Samberg had a great first full-time year in the league. I think he's only going to get better. But still, I have concerns on that right side. And I don't know if Chevy is going to address it. I don't know if you're going to go into next year, with Dylan DeMello and Neil Pionk and Nate Schmidt. It's possible that you do, but I don't know why you would expect different results defensively if you're going with the exact same group of defensemen.
I think that's a very astute point, Ezzy. You're right that the Jets, now you can see that in some of the acquisitions the team has made up front this offseason, that I think they're putting more focus on defensive responsibility and defensive awareness from their forwards. I think, Iafallo, defensively responsible. Velarde, as Dave mentioned, defensively responsible. Whereas, Dubois certainly had his shortcomings in that area. And Wheeler just didn't necessarily have the same foot speed and didn't have the same capabilities as he once did. Not that he was ever a defensive stalwart to begin with. So I think with the forward group, there's definitely an emphasis on that. But, with all due respect to Neil Pionk, and I mean, Neil Pionk has certainly been a target and a focal point on the Jets back end for a number of years now, unless he's going to experience a career renaissance. And Nate Schmidt, too, who's obviously sort of seen his effectiveness take a step back over the last number of years. With those, if the 6D, and I'm going to focus primarily on Pionk and Schmidt, if those guys are still there, it's hard to believe that the team is going to take the massive step forward on the back end defensively that I think is necessary to improve their fortunes. They just, if it's the same level of performance on the right side, as you said, Ezzy, I think it's going to be a similar amount of issues. And we know about the log jam on the back end. We know about Declan Chisholm needing a spot, Ville Heinola, potentially needing a spot. So there's
not a spot as it stands now for Chisholm. I think he's ready for the NHL, but where's the spot? Ville Heinola, last time I checked, he wants to crack the Jets top 6 as well. They're both left shot defensemen. Could either of them play on the right side? Of course, but you've got the same issue. You've got 3 veterans that are all under contract. And to me, Drew, it goes beyond just the right side. And, sometimes the Jets struggling with, shot suppression or allowing too many shots, if you want to look at it like that, right? Like it's how the Jets play as a team defensively, right? So I agree with you. Gabe Velarde is a good defensive forward. Alex Iafallo, he's 29 years old. I mean, he has a proven track record of being a guy who's tenacious and he can forecheck and he's responsible defensively. But it's Mark Scheifele, it's Kyle Connor, it's Nick Ehlers, it's everybody on the Jets. And last year there were too many times where the Jets fell apart. Like in the second half of the season, you don't forget, like the Jets had a below 500 record, and a lot of it had to do with their struggles offensively, but it also had to do with the fact that they just gave teams way too much in the middle of the ice. We talk about it all the time, high danger chances and everything like that, right? So I mean, there has to be more of a commitment to team defense. We've been saying this for 4 years now, basically since 2018, when the Jets had probably their best defensive team, right? So yes, I agree that Velarde and Iafallo and Nemesnikov is a defensively responsible forward, I would say. He's not just all offense. I mean, if he is all offense, that's a problem, because he doesn't exactly put up 70-point seasons, right? He's more of a 30 to 40-point guy, right? Yeah. But I like Pionk, but I just think right now on the right side, you've got too many second pairing defensemen, right? And I think, Nate Schmidt, I have no problem with Schmidt as a third pairing guy. If he's playing 12 to 14 minutes a night on the right side, I have no problem. It is Neil Pionk who struggled. It's not offensively. No. Neil Pionk is a great offensive defenseman. And I don't know if it ever came out that he was dealing with an injury. We suspected he was dealing with something last year, just because he looked like he just didn't have that same speed element to his game that same physical element to his game, right, Dave? So yes, Neil Pionk, I think, will be better this year, but is he going to be good enough that he's going to get back to that kind of elite top 4 defenseman that he was when he first came over to the Jets, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question, that is the biggest question. You're right. Can you repeat what you had essentially last year? And I think as he hits on a good point, I think it isn't just, isolating these defensemen and saying they are weak, they're, incapable of playing defense. Because it's funny, because we've seen them play defense before. It's the system overall. And I thought that was one of the comments that I just highlighted, was the fact that maybe if the Jets had a better commitment. And as he's right, Kyle Connor is not a good defensive forward. Mark Scheifele is not a good defensive forward. Pierre-Luc Dubois was not a good defensive forward. Well, if you have guys who are considered not good defensive forwards, and your defense is not on the stronger side, that's going to make your team more exposed.
Your 5-man unit is going to be weak defensively in that case.
I mean, let's not forget the one where with last year when Kyle Connor flew the zone, but the puck was still behind him, and they turned around, and I don't remember which game that was. It was towards the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that there were a lot of instances of that. There were a lot of instances where guys just didn't make the right defensive play, and then the defense gets exposed. And yeah, you could say the Jets need a stronger defense. Well, I mean, this is the NHL. It's not easy to have, absolutely everything be A++. And the fact is that it's not, again, I'm not going to use Kevin Cheveldayoff's, it's not fantasy hockey. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out, like folks were saying, well, they could have gotten Travis Sanheim. But as Ez would say, it doesn't help you you don't need more on the left side. You need more on the right. And especially with, Morrissey, Dillon, and Pionk, your left side is fine. There's nothing wrong with your left side. And then having Chisholm as an option, having Villiers as an option, I guess Logan Stanley is an option. There's a lot of potential options if you need a replacement, for one of those guys temporarily.
Don't forget about Capo.
Well, I think of him as a right side, to be honest with you, just because even though he's a left shot, he plays on the right side, and he's kind of their only right side option because, even in terms of depth, they're heavy on the left. So, yeah, and then it becomes we know Dylan DeMello is a very capable defenseman. There's no question about it. But the question becomes Neil Pionk. Is he going to, because to me, he wasn't good enough last year. And again, it's not only on, I think we've just outlined why it's not just on one defenseman, but you have an expectation when you sign a contract that you're going to play to that level of the contract. He's not playing to the level of the contract he signed with the Winnipeg Jets. He's just not. And there's ways to quantify that. And I think it's pretty evident. And so, yeah, you're needing more from Neil Pionk. And I just think, would it behoove the Jets to go out and get a right side guy for this team, a big right side guy to either pair with Josh Morrissey or in that second pairing? Absolutely. I absolutely do. Sure. Someone, but I'm just saying, well, although it sounds like it's Carolina bust for him, but you know what I mean? I absolutely think so. But I think we've talked about, I think your left side is fine. Your left side doesn't need to be amended, but you need something. You need to augment that right side in some capacity to add something. What we've been talking about all with the Jets for a long time is that depth. And if you can finally find that depth, whether it costs you something significant in terms of a prospect. I mean, again, we've just outlined this logjam you have on the left side. So maybe one of the prospects in a draft pick gets you someone who is not fitting into somebody else's cap or whatever it's going to be, and you can peel them away and really strengthen your right side, because that's what you need. Because like I said, I don't see a problem with the left side, but I definitely see the right side being an issue for the Jets.
I think it ultimately comes down to, I think we all agree Chevy did really well on the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. I think, we all like the signings that he made. I don't think any of the signings you were scratching your head, right? Like Laurent Brossoit, you needed a backup goalie. So you went out and you got a guy that's familiar and also had a good year with Vegas. Let's not discount how good he was for Vegas. He was the starting goalie for the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Then they obviously got injured and Aiden Hill took over and did an amazing job, right? Colin Delia, again, you needed that. Chevy, this isn't Chevy's first rodeo. Chevy knows what he's doing here. He needed to get a veteran goalie at the AHL level. He did that. Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, not only did he contribute some offense and provide energy, he was a fan favorite. The Jets fan, not that Chevy makes his decisions based on that, but Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, good move for the fourth line. Nemesnikov, a guy that can play second line center, can play second line wing, most likely is going to be a third line player, I would imagine, with Like,
I mean,
assuming Cole Perfetti's healthy, Perfetti and Velarde, you assume are going to be second line guys, right?
yeah.
But Nemesnikov, good signing. So these are all good signings, but I think you have to factor in, this team has to be much better defensively. And again, I come back to that because the offense is going to come with Scheifele and Ehlers and Connor and Velarde, and it goes on and on and on. But the Jets can't be that team that they were the last 3 years where you try to outscore your problems. That's what it is. And I realize that Rick Bowness is a coach, that can figure out how to, get the best out of his team defensively. You look what he did with Dallas. They were a very good defensive team. But it ultimately comes down to the Jets are going to have to change the way they play. And we'll ask Murat about it, because that's my biggest concern. I'm not concerned. Cole Perfetti, if he's healthy next year, Dave, 50 to 60 points easy for Perfetti. Velarde, I could see him getting up to 50 to 60 points, whether it's up the middle or on the wing. Nemesnikov, I think, gives you some good offense. Iafallo can chip in, 15 goals, 30 points, something like that. I'm not concerned about the offense on this Jets team. It's the defense that I'm more concerned about.
When we come back, we head out to Jets development camp. Murat Atesh of The Athletic joins us to talk about the offseason, the development camp, and everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, and Empty Screen. Empty Screen, you're looking great today. I think you've been very articulate.
Wouldn't it be amazing if a bird landed on Ezzy's mic right now and all of a sudden just started chirping?
I'm just sort of expecting at some point in time or another, like you're going to see some sort of like hawk, like swoop in and just smack him in the face.
I haven't seen any hawks out here. You see bald eagles for sure, though.
Okay, well, I'm willing.
I'm not talking about Eddie Belfour.
I'm willing to take a bald eagle flying in and smacking you right in the noggin. I mean, it would be, I wouldn't be happy that you'd be potentially injured, but I would be happy that you would provide us with comedy. So it's sort of, I'm torn a little bit about that. Speaking of comedy, I want to say a big thank you to our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club for having us out there on Thursday as judges in the Winnipeg's Funniest Person with a Day Job contest. All the contestants did a great job, and somehow your future in that contest was put in the hands of us three yutzes. So we'd apologize for that, but kudos to all the contestants. Kudos to those who moved on to the semifinal, and kudos to you, Ezzy, for your love of regular porn. That was very important, I think, for us to find out that night.
Yeah, you're referencing Daryl Purvis, who was interacting with that fan, the young Eugene Levy, if you guys remember. Obviously, you remember, you were there. But yeah, that was a ton of fun. As you mentioned, judging Winnipeg's Funniest Person with the Day Job. Some funny comedians, and obviously that plate of nachos, Drew, that me and you demolished.
We did a good job on that.
I'd say we ate probably 80% of that plate of nachos. Mm-hmm. But for anybody who's been to Rumors, and obviously if you haven't, we recommend you go immediately, buy your tickets right now at rumorsrestaurantandcomedyclub.com.
Rumorscomedyclub.com, but close.
Okay, rumorscomedy.com. Buy your tickets.
Rumorscomedyclub.com.
Rumorscomedyclub.com. Jordan Rock, Chris Rock's brother, is coming up. Yeah. So get your tickets now. But if you've ever been to Rumors and had the nachos, you know what I'm talking about. It's a massive plate of nachos, delicious. Drew and I put some chicken on there. It was terrific.
Yeah, we put the chicken on there to make sure that Dave, when he showed up a few minutes after us, would be unable to eat any of that because you can't mix the milk and the meat, as you know, in the Minuk household. So Ezzy and I, with some strategic, logical thinking there to keep the nachos for ourselves and keep Dave shunted to the outside. Good thinking there, Ed Ginsberg. I'm proud of you for that one.
Well, Dave M had his cheese pizza. He was good.
He was happy. The segment obviously brought to you by our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, and of course, Zappia Group Realty. We thank all of our regular sponsors for their support of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve post-game show, which is coming up in mere months from now. So we look forward to bringing you another season of post-game shows, including some live on-location ones at Boston Pizza. More details to come there. Oh, there you go, Nicole. She's never been there, but her daughter's social is there next Saturday. So there you go. We look forward to welcoming the people at Rumors. Look forward to welcoming you and your daughter for her wedding social there next Saturday.
By the way, Drew, Murat just texted me. I'm not sure. I can't see behind the scenes. Only you guys can see what's happening behind the scenes. So I don't think Murat's there yet, but he texted me about 8 minutes ago saying that he made the executive decision to go to Tim Hortons. So he might be a little bit held up because obviously, as we mentioned, he's going to be at Jets development camp. Right. Out at Hockey for All Center, not Iceplex, Hockey for All Center. So I think Murat should be joining us shortly.
He and I were
There you go.
he and I were strategizing where he should set up. I suggested the restaurant on the second floor, but maybe it was I suspect there'll be a big crowd today at the arena. So maybe there's
Big crowd, even though you're not going to be there, Dave. I just assume that the Dave M Mafia follows you wherever you go.
No.
But it has been, they've done a nice job with development camp this go around. First of all, it's the first development camp in a number of years, but I know that all the engagement has been terrific, and it's nice to see things like that. And I the cynical side of me says, of course, right now they're happy to engage with the public, but once they become actual regular NHLers, the engagement level goes down dramatically. But for the time being, I will put aside my cynicism and say it's nice to see that. I know Bailey's been getting some autographs. Bailey's been down there on the regular. So it is nice to see that they've been spending some quality time with the fan base and everything else. And I'm sure it's a thrill for the young players as well. We're pleased to welcome to the program from the Jets development camp, joining us live, Murat Atesh of The Athletic. Good morning, good sir. How are things?
Good morning, Drew. Good morning, Illegal Curve. I want to start with the cautionary tale. I want to start with the cautionary tale about people who are not always early for things, who, if you are one of those people, like me this morning, and you have the opportunity to be 15 minutes early for something, and then you have a daydream about, like, what if I got a coffee? I'm so early. I'm so 15 minutes early for this show that I must have time to do everything else on my to-do list right now. Don't listen. Don't listen. I'm sorry, guys. I just got caught in the Tim Hortons line outside the Iceplex here. And I've been keeping you waiting in your beautiful, sunny, cottage-looking places like Ezzy and your fire. And, I just wanted to start with that, if you'd give me that.
Well, Murat, I just wanted to be closer to your hometown of beautiful Pinawa, right? So that's why I was going to do the show with you at Hockey for All Center, but I just decided I wanted to be in the Eastman region out here in Lac-du-Bonny/Pinawa. So, and by the way, you can be late anytime you want.
Yeah,
it's okay. We start the show late every week, Murat. So
yeah,
we're
we
good.
do start the show every week. Every week we start the show late, so really, you're fine. Show up whenever you want. We don't really care. We're going to be here, as long as it's before 11 o'clock.
We're just happy to talk to someone who isn't one of the three of us, Murat. To be honest with you, so we're happy that you're here, even if it's 5 minutes late.
I appreciate it very much, and your setup near my hometown looks absolutely gorgeous. I hope you see some deer.
I have deer in my front yard on the regular basis, but that's a separate issue entirely. We'll talk about instead hockey, because I think that's why people are tuned in, not our nature programming. Murat, obviously our first time to really chat with you since the Dubois trade happened, since the Wheeler trade happened, since free agency happened last Saturday. What is your impression of where the Jets sit currently with the current roster if training camp were to start next week, for example?
If you started training camp, Drew, and you put Mark Scheifele as your number one center and Connor Hellebuck as your number one goaltender, and you go through the pieces, and behind that you have Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers and Gabriel Velarde and Cole Perfetti and Nemestikov signed. The defense last year, Brendan Dillon had a particularly good season. Josh Morrissey had a legendary season. Connor Hellebuck has taken teams much worse than this to the precipice of the postseason. If there were no other shoes to drop or that concern about what the long-term future is like, you'd go into this season thinking like, hey, there's a chance to make the playoffs, and maybe if everybody hits, and that's a lot of ifs, if Cole Perfetti takes the next steps, if Gabriel Velarde doubles down on his breakout season last year, if all of those things work out, if they keep Hellebuck and Scheifele all year, no guarantees there, you'd see the chance to win playoff round. Perhaps a chance even at that. So I'm impressed with what Cheveldayoff has done thus far, specifically with that Dubois trade and the package that he got for it. I think we all know that it's still in flux, though, at least in the long enough time frame, and there's some concern about that.
Murat, I'm going to get right into the hard-hitting questions here, because right before we had you on, we were talking about, based on these moves, so including the Dubois trade, including, re-signing Nemesnikov, re-signing I guess re-signing Axel Janssen Fjallby, even though technically it wasn't a re-signing. I guess Nemesnikov wasn't either, but you could factor in bringing in Lauren Brossoit as a backup to Hellebuck. All the moves that Chevy has made basically since right before the draft. Is this team better? And my argument was I still have some concerns about the defense and also team defense, not necessarily just one or two individual players. But I wanted to ask you about that second line. And obviously, we're going to be talking about this. You make your weekly appearance on Winnipeg Sports Talk. You do other media, and obviously, including your work with The Athletic. We're going to be talking about this a lot. But as it stands now, do you see it being Cole Perfetti up the middle on the second line? Do you see it being Gabe Vilardi up the middle on the second line? Or is it like Dave mentioned earlier? Are you going to see both of those guys, and whoever basically performs better is who eventually becomes the long-term second line center?
I think that you will see both of those guys at least get a look. And I also think you'll see Nemesnikov get a look. I think that you're going to see a little bit of, especially the way that Rick Bowness ran his bench last year, where, for example, Cole Perfetti might be a top six left wing for most of the game, and then partway through the third period, he got bumped down, somebody else got bumped up. Now with the added depth of having an Alex Iafallo type option who's excellent at that sort of thing, you might imagine, a little bit more flexibility that way. So I don't think that there's going to be a set in stone option. I do think there's going to be a little competition for that. You might say Vilardi's done it more recently at the NHL level playoffs for LA, and that might give him a good look. But of course, Kevin Cheveldayoff was talking about Cole Perfetti as a center recently at the draft and free agency as well. So I think they'll get opportunities, and it will be about fits. And if you factor in Rick Bowness and the way that he runs his bench, you're going to see him sort of pick and choose certain moments. We didn't see him trust, young and, smaller Cole Perfetti in some of those defensive zone draws, even when it was his job as the winger just to corral the puck and bring it up. So we'll see. Like I to use a bonus-ism, I think that there will be a lot of flux there as they look for their opportunities and choose a long-term option.
Well, let's focus on the future, not the present, not the past, although technically the past because they were drafted in the past. But let's focus on the future, which is where you are. What have been your impressions for the last 4 days of the development
Murat's
camp?
in the future?
Well, he's future casting right now, Drew. Don't interrupt me.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been a really positive time here at development camp. I think that's the takeaway, right? Dave, you and I were chatting about this yesterday, and we've had a chance to be around here, and the vibes are good, to be sure. I think the thing that has struck me, and maybe this is just something I think about a lot in life, is when you have players with particular strengths, I look at the way they use those strengths. How do you use the thing that you're good at to help your team, help everybody else, and bring people in? And Rutger McGroarty, who we've talked about ad nauseum, just the degree to which he's a positive, engaging force. He's full of energy, talking to the fans and the kids for 20 minutes after he gets off the ice, or if not more, and then he comes into the dressing room, does all the media, and he's partnered with Colby Barlow a lot on these things. They're having a good time. I just think it speaks so well of him as a person that his social confidence is being used in a way that brings people in. Colby Barlow is having the time of his life at this camp right now. I guarantee it, partly because Rutger McGroarty has thrown his arm around him and said, come under my wing, let's have some fun with all of this. And that's not the only situation of this. A lot of these guys have started to form these relationships that have sort of boiled over into we can see how much fun they're having well after they get off the ice. And I know people want to know what the on-ice impressions are, who looks good, who's the best chance to make the roster, and all those sorts of things. I don't think I'm there. I cannot give you more than some broad brush strokes in terms of that, because I don't think that's what development camp is about for these guys right now, so much as making first impressions, getting to know the org, and sort of starting their journey in terms of making that dream happen.
Murat Atesh, our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Murat is at Hockey for All Center covering Winnipeg Jets development camp. Murat, considering that you're in the future, apparently, or we're future casting at the very least, what do you see happening with Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck? I look at the signing of Brossoit and Delia as potential insulation if the Jets were to trade Hellebuck between now and, say, the start of the season. You could go not with a great combination, but you could go with Brossoit and Delia as your goaltending tandem and, sort of hold your breath a little bit. How do you foresee Scheifele and Hellebuck playing out over the rest of this offseason?
I mean, let me know if there's rink volume at this point. I'll hold the mic closer. You'll have to turn me down, but we've got folks showing up on the ice to my left.
We love ring volume, Murad. That's fine. That makes for better ambiance. It's part of the show. No problem,
sure.
man.
My dulcet tones are not enough on this one. The shortest answer with these guys, honestly, guys, is that I don't know. Is that I don't know what the future is for them. I do not picture Connor Hellebuck as a long-term Winnipeg Jet. I just don't see it. If you take him at his word, which I do, that his goal is a Stanley Cup or bust, a retooling team that's pretty good isn't as much of a sell as some of the other options. And I know there's been some talk about, well, he's simply asking too much. A 9.5 ask would be too much for New Jersey to fit in. Why would a team like that spend on him? Well, by next summer, and you have so many multiple bidders and all that sort of thing, I don't think he gets his 9.5, but I think he gets paid very, very well in a substantial raise over his 6 right now, maybe 8.5, that sort of deal. I think there are people who are willing to pay.
Contract.
Exactly. That's the sort of thought. And Sorokin's younger and got more Vezina Trophy votes this year than Connor Hellebuck did, although Hellebuck has done it for longer, and I feel like some people will respond to that. That'll be a more of a blue chip scenario, even at 30 years old. I think the market will be there for him at some point. So I've floated this idea before that what if Winnipeg starts the season with him in net? His goaltending gives Winnipeg a tremendous chance to get itself into playoff position, but it also knows it doesn't want to lose him for nothing. So the trade deadline might be an opportunity to cycle around another trade to a contender if there are some. I keep thinking about New Jersey, but that wouldn't be the only option, who could afford him with half his salary paid, half his cap hit eaten up by that stretch. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense in terms of a maximizing assets returned for Connor Hellebuck sort of scenario, because I know the market, or I'm told the market isn't particularly good for him right now. But it also would create this awkward situation of, well, what if Winnipeg was good? Why would you get rid of a starting goaltender of that caliber before a playoff run? Brossoit's gotten the job done for one series, and he was great, but there would be so much risk in that. It would be sort of a push-pull of, do you want to lose him for nothing? Do you want to go for this playoff run? What have you? Again, I still see it. I see a move, whether it's UFA next year or a trade before that in his future. Scheifele, I'm even less sure, but I could see a world in which there's an extension there. I'm just not sure about that for sure. Sure.
Yeah, I think you broke it down really well there. And Murad, I wanted to ask you about Nick Ehlers, because it seems like, I mentioned this to Dave, I think it was a few weeks ago, something like that. Like, he's a guy that no one really talks about that often. And I think, you would agree that he's arguably the most skilled player on the team, or at the very least, he's one of the top skilled players on the team. But as you know, last year was difficult for him with the sports hernia surgery, the other injuries. He didn't play much more than half of a season. He played well when he did play. But the question I wanted to ask you is, how important do you view him in terms of the team's success? And I think that could be fairly obvious for a lot of people, right? Like, you want Ehlers to be healthy for the majority of the season, just like you want Kyle Connor healthy, Gabe Vilardi, Josh Morrissey. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But I guess I feel like with all of the injury problems that Ehlers has had over the years, he must be viewing this season as like, this has got to be the season that I'm completely healthy, especially with Pierre-Luc Dubois traded, with the Blake Wheeler buyout. I would assume that he is so excited to get going and possibly have a career year if he's able to stay healthy the full year. Yeah,
I mean, gosh, what a quality of player. What an unfortunate situation, him missing, the playoffs as he did, and so much of them. The sports hernia surgery situation. It was impressive he came back as well as he did, because other people in that scenario, Andrew Kopp, for one example, took a long time. And I think it caught up to Ehlers at some point. I don't think that has anything to do with the injury that kept him out of the playoffs, but I do think that it was a challenge to get back up to his speed. he's going to be so important because no matter how you draw up the Winnipeg Jets lines, without Dubois there, you need somebody who you can genuinely believe is going to tilt the ice. And whether it's through bronze or brains or speed or skill or whatever else it is, you need to look at that lineup and believe somebody's going to get the puck to the other end of the ice and do good things with it there. He's a sure bet at that. And yes, he drives like some people crazy in terms of you can't always predict what he's going to do. If you're Mark Scheifele looking for passes into the middle of the ice, Ehlers doesn't time those as well as Kyle Connor does, for example. But by volume, the overall effect of what happens when Nikolai Ehlers plays hockey is the puck gets to the other end of the ice and Winnipeg creates offense. And his ability to stay healthy, like that type of consistency, will have everything to do with Winnipeg's ability to consistently create at 5-on-5 as it's trying to break in, Perfetti into a feature role, Velarde, we've talked about it, all of that. And even Kyle Connor can benefit from somebody who gets the puck into the other end as quick as he is. The offensive chops really require somebody who can do that. So I think, old school people scoff at the term puck transporter, but that's what he is. He gets the puck from one end to the other, and that's incredibly important for this year's Jets.
That seems like a futuristic term right there, Murat. Puck transporter. That's something that future hockey players would be called.
Make a Jason Statham movie out of it.
Yeah, you could. You could definitely make a Jason Statham movie out of it. I think you're onto something there. Murat Atesh, our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Murat joining us live from Winnipeg Jets development camp.
All right, Murat, you said you didn't want to give too much of your on-ice assessment from development camp, but I'm just going to ask you specifically if there's anything that has caught your eye. I mean, we've been wowed by Nikita Chibrikov. Elias Salamonson has made some nice impressions, but maybe one or two players that have just kind of caught your eye throughout the course of this past week.
Yeah, Salamonson just looks smooth, comfortable, confident out there. I really look forward to seeing what he can do with a full healthy year. Again, we're talking about health, but in Sweden again, I think he's somebody that the organization views really quite optimistically in terms of their long-term future. That's an interesting one for me. Fabian Wagner, I thought was interesting in a couple of drills. Like again, they're doing this. The maximum defense is 3-on-3, and usually it's far less than that, right? So problem solving takes a back seat towards just puck touches and familiarity. There are some little habits that you see, and they do a couple of drills. Well, they'll just chip a puck into a corner to start a drill, then somebody picks up the puck, centers it, or moves it, or what have you. And one of the things you can tell is who is committed, at least without any pressure on their back, to shoulder check on their way into the corner and to get a lay of the land elsewhere in the zone, right? And it's something at the NHL level that's so important. Josh Morrissey does it well. Dylan Samberg impressed with that. In the AHL level, Ville Heinola is phenomenal at it. Declan Chisholm's phenomenal at it. Just go into the corner, know what the landscape is, so that when you get the puck, you're not thinking or waiting or watching. And there's some guys, Salomonson's been good at that. Fabian Wagner, that's why I bring up his name. I just as a forward going into the corner and finding his options. That's something you can tell when players have played at a high level versus not, and you can see Rutger McGrory doing sort of thing as well. And I think that's more about habits at this stage, and I appreciate them. But again, if there were 5 guys out there, maybe some people's habits would change.
Murat, I believe you tweeted about this. Samberg gets a 2-year contract, $1.4 million per year. I think I'm with you. If I recall your tweet, you were sort of surprised that it was only 2 years in length, given his track record, albeit a 1-year track record. Do you want to maybe expand on your thoughts regarding your surprise about the Samberg contract?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, $1.4 million for Dylan Samberg. Good. He gets a modest raise. And no matter how you draw up the Winnipeg Jets defense core, he's going to provide better value to the Jets than that $1.4 million. Even if, he's a third pairing shelter D and the logjam doesn't clear, he's going to provide at least that and probably much more in terms of quality play. And you can feel confident in the Winnipeg Jets that you signed a player to a good value deal. But I've been around this block a few times, and I'm getting skeptical every time I see this pattern happen, where a young restricted free agent signs a deal that expires 1 year before UFA status with arbitration rights. That was the play Jacob Trouba did to sort of get himself in a position to be traded the year before he became UFA. It was Andrew Kopp's path as well. And I know people have different opinions about whether he would have stayed or not. I think that was Andrew Kopp's path. That's my impression. We've seen Winnipeg Jets, and Pierre-Luc Dubois recently was on the one-year deal sort of program to get to within 1 year of unrestricted free agency. And what that does is it gives a player so much power. All they have to do is file for arbitration. It guarantees a 1 year contract. Boom, they're an unrestricted free agent the next year. Even if they stay, that's a substantial raise. And I just think some of this is me having seen this pattern play out with players in different individual circumstances than Dylan Samberg is. But if you look at the fact he'll become an unrestricted free agent in 2025 and be able to do that play again, it just means to me, even if he stays, then that next contract's going to be maybe more expensive than it needed to be. If Winnipeg had the opportunity, and I don't know that they did, if Dylan Samberg was open to this, if you could have gone 4 or 5, et cetera, years on this player, I believe in him so much. I think you would have gotten tremendous value over the long haul.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question, Murat. I was going to follow up and ask you if, you've talked to anybody either in the Jets organization, close to the Jets organization, outside of the Jets organization, I guess, if that was an option, because I remember we were talking about this, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago, 6 weeks ago. And, I like the idea of signing Samberg to 4 or 5 years for all the reasons that you outlined, right? Then you buy up a UFA year. And also, I think at this point, don't you know what Dylan Samberg is? Yes, he's only played 1 full season in the NHL, but I think you would agree with, his years of college hockey with Minnesota Duluth, his years in the American Hockey League. Like, this is a veteran pro player at this point, and I think everybody expects him to be, a staple of the Jets' top 6. So I agree with you in terms of, maybe hoping that the Jets sign him to, a 4 or 5 year deal.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to anybody who's given me the inside scoop on the lengths discussed or anything to that effect. So to be clear, I bring it up as a concern, but I don't know it was on the table to go that long term. For me, the only question left about Dylan Samberg's career path is, can he do it in a top 4 role? And I think he can, but as I repeat myself, and I've written this at the site too, the way that defensive coaches are able to use minutes, the top pairing and the second pairing, the type of minutes they get, quite similar to each other. There's just too many first, second, third line forwards of quality to go around. If you're on the second pair, you're still getting a heavy dose of the other team's best players. You can't really shelter that. And Winnipeg doesn't, it really hasn't. But that third pairing, you can protect a little bit. And they did it with Logan Stanley in his rookie season. It was incredibly sheltered. His results were wonderful. They did it with Tucker Poolman once upon a time, incredibly sheltered back when the team was so deep, and the results were wonderful. Samberg on that third pair, primarily with Nate Schmidt, didn't have to play against the type of competition with the type of consistency that Josh Morrissey or Brendan Dillon or Dylan DeMello or Neil Pionk had to. I believe he can get to that. I believe he just had an excellent season. When you watch by the eye test and you look at the way he picks up pucks, where the way that when teams overlap and they cycle and they make their switches, he doesn't get lost the way that some of the other younger D do. Like Logan Stanley doesn't handle that situation as well as Dylan Samberg does. There are so many micro moments within the game that give you confidence he can be a top 4D. But just because he was awesome last year as a third pair does not guarantee it. If you're Winnipeg, cool, 1.4 or even 2 or whatever, you'd be willing to bet on a player long term. If the worst case is a third pair D, great, you're set for life, right? If you're Dylan Samberg, though, and you believe maybe you can get into that role and show everybody that, hey, you can do that, maybe 2 year betting on yourself, you've emerged as a top 4D who they count on to play big minutes, big PK minutes. Maybe you can, get closer to 4 or something at that time. I'm just making numbers up. And that could be an incentive there, too.
Before the doors open at the former Iceplex, Murat, I got one last question for you. On July 26th, 2021, Kevin Cheveldayoff acquired Brendan Dillon. On July 27th, 2021, Kevin Cheveldayoff acquired Nate Schmidt. Should we be looking at past history and past activity as maybe a guiding light for how the Jets are going to maybe address the logjam on the back end? Do you see them doing something over the course of the next few weeks similar to what they did in acquiring Schmidt and Dillon in 2021?
Well, the cynic in me says there have been so many summers where the July or August move is, Mark Letestu, Matt Hendricks, or Sam Gagne. You know what I mean? Like we haven't seen as many midsummer moves as that particular year. However, Cheveldayoff did give us a little bit of breadcrumbs the other day, saying, well, long runway between now and training camp when he was asked about the logjam on defense. So I don't know how active or how close or anything things are on that front. I have the door open in my mind that it's at least possible that something does happen that clears either a veteran or even one of the young guys, Logan Stanley or Ville Heinola or what have you, to sort of change the look, give people some more opportunity, maybe even clear some cap space, though they're not desperate for it. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's a lock, but I think that is something that would be actively discussed. So if there is a move, then, we can pretend that we weren't surprised by it, I guess.
Murat, because you can go to the future, what will Drew be eating for lunch July 28th, 2025?
That illegal curve sandwich at the deli, I think, has his name on it. I might walk by down the streets, across the window. He'll see me. He won't say hi. But
I'm waving right now. Look, I'm waving. I'm blowing kisses. Mwah.
Hi,
Mwah.
Drew.
I'm hugging. I'm cheering. Everything.
The
By the way,
positivity
Murat, if
just
you ever
drips.
venture into River Heights, let me know because I'll treat you to an illegal curve sandwich at Bernstein's Deli. I know the owner, so I will hook you up.
We have this on record now, folks. We have it on record. I want that.
We wave in River Heights. In Crescentwood, Drew's in his little protected little, upper class bubble, but in us working class folk, Dave and I in River Heights, we walk the mean streets every single day. So we're very friendly and we wave and we acknowledge our illegal curve guests as opposed to Drew, who doesn't like to be, bothered in his little Crescentwood domain.
Yeah. For the record, Dave and Murat, you're welcome at my house anytime you want. Ginsburg, if you step foot on my property, security has been alerted and is ready and armed and dangerous. Murat, thank you. We'll let you get to the start of development camp. Say hi to all the paparazzi and make sure you sign your autograph legibly when the fans come up to you throughout the course of the morning.
Oh, my goodness. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers, Murat. Love you.
There he goes, Murat Atesh joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We go to break and come back with more Jets talk. Hour number 2 up next. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rollies, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollies.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to help optimize no-look dipping. Ooh, making adjustments so you can stay focused on the game. The playoffs at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
Welcome back. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk enjoying the splendor of our indoor accommodations. Dr. Ginsburg has left again and is now coming back. I did not realize, Ezzy, that you're wearing a t-shirt with a massive donut on it. That's very
I sure
on
am,
point.
Drew. I sure am.
I appreciate that t-shirt. That's a good quality t-shirt. I give you a thumbs up for that t-shirt.
I also ate a donut this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah, we had some Timbits. We hit up Tim Hortons, but Naomi and the kids hit up Tim Hortons before we came out here because we took separate cars because Naomi doesn't like to be in the same car as me when we drive out to the cottage for obvious reasons. The BO is what I'm talking about here. So they picked up a little bit of Tim Hortons. Dave M's trying really hard not to laugh. I don't know why Dave M's being so serious. Maybe he's playing chess online. I have no idea, but
I didn't have that same problem. I was laughing.
Popped a couple Timbits in my mouth, and we're ready to go here. I had to get some more coffee. That's what I do during the breaks. I run from the patio here. I guess the deck, not the patio. I'm not at Moxie's right now. I just went to go get a bit of coffee, and sorry, I timed the commercial breaks poorly.
That's okay. We'll forgive you this time. Dave M., you had some late night Moose news last night. Maybe you want to share with the audience if they haven't necessarily caught up on that.
That's a good point, Drew. That's absolutely a good point. It's never a time not to have some Moose news, if you know what I'm saying.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
It's been a while since I've been able to do that, so I needed the intro. I couldn't just
I feel
kick it
like
off.
Dave hits that intro like he just does that in his spare time by himself. Like he just does his own little Zoom shows and he hits the intro.
I think
like when I can't fall asleep at night, actually, what I do is I just go to that and I clip it and just listen to it on repeat.
Some people count sheep. Dave just here's the
moose call puts me right to sleep. It's like sleep like a baby. No, the moose. The news is that CJ Cease, as the folks in the chat are writing about, is going to be back in the fold.
Awesome.
Never connect.
That's
never
great news. I didn't know that. Did we post that on the website?
We did, very late at night, 12 o'clock.
I was playing categories last night, so I must have missed that.
That's okay.
Categories.
Yeah, great game.
Fun. Actually, it's a great game. I actually love categories.
Yeah.
That's
I used to play that with my Baba.
It's a big Minuk family game.
Yeah.
Is the
I was dominating when we got to W yesterday. I really am good with the W.
Now, Ezzy, when you play though,
letters, but the W, I was just
when you play though, do you allow the double score? So if there's a word that has okay, good.
Yeah.
I once used Porno for Pyros as the name of a band, and my Baba was not familiar with Porno for Pyros.
What do you mean? That's Jane's Addiction.
Yeah,
the lead
Perry
singer.
Farrell.
Perry Farrell, yeah.
Perry Farrell, the guy who invented Lollapalooza.
Yeah, my grandmother was unaware of Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros is the point of my story. And
let's get back to the moose because I don't really want to hear about your grandmother.
Did you tell your Baba that you also downloaded Porno for Pyro?
It was before the internet days, I can assure you.
Anyways, the point is CJ Cease. Let's bring it back to the Minnesota kid who's back in the fold. The 2014 fifth rounder. We were all there, the three of us in Philadelphia when he got drafted. So he is back in the fold.
We were there when CJ Franklin got drafted. If you
That's
really
a very
want to
good
go
point.
back,
that's true. In 2017, he changed his name to Cease. That's his mother's name. So CJ Cease is back in the fold. He signed a 2-year deal with the Moose. Hasn't been officially announced by the team. Expect that probably Monday. But CJ Cease's agency announced it a few days ago. So he'll be back. It's a 2-year deal at the AHL level. He signed as a free agent with the San Jose Sharks after playing for the Jets Moose organization. He got 4 games with the Jets. At the NHL level, played 1 game for San Jose. Most of his games played with the Barracuda last season, but he'll be back in the fold. So it's a 2-year deal for him. So nice signing for the Jets and by the Moose story. And like I said, it helps insulate because it's going to be a young prospect group potentially, Ezzy, with the Chaz Lucius, the Brad Lamberts, Nikita Chibrakovs. A lot of people are excited about Nikita Chibrikov. He has dazzled quite a bit. He's shown some ingenuity. He's not the biggest guy, but he's definitely got some moves here at development camp. So you need to sprinkle those guys in. And people were lamenting already, of course, because that's what people do, about the addition of a guy, who's going to block the path potentially. But as I said to them on Twitter last night, I said, look, the Moose scratched Jimmy Olney, who's the captain, who also, of course, we should mention, Drew, was re-signed this week. The captain, was signed to a 1-year deal by Manitoba. That one is official. But when the Jets needed to scratch, or the Moose needed to scratch a veteran, they scratched the captain of the team in order to play the Simon Lundmarks, the Tyrell Bowers, and those types of guys, Declan Chisholms, in order to get the young guys the game. So the fact of the matter is that the Moose have shown ability to let the kids play if they can. And like I said, it'll be a benefit. So having a guy like Cease, who's a capable AHLer, along with the Toninatos and whomever else is going to be sprinkled in there as a veteran presence with those young guys. Ashton Sautner for sure. But I think it'll be a good way to help these guys, especially look, you've got guys like Daniel Torgerson and Henry Nikkinen who are ready to, really take on a role with this Moose team, as well as, like I said, the Brad Lamberts and all the other young prospects.
Fabian Wagner's another guy, right, Dave? I'm not
sure. He's going back to Sweden next year.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought because he signed a deal, I thought he was going to play for the Moose, but.
Yeah, I believe he's going back. I mean, you never know, Ezzy. I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of guys who, like, I know, like we talked about with Murat, Elias Salamonson, Anton Johannesson, who I spoke with yesterday. He's going back to Sweden. He's going up a level. He's a smaller defenseman, but he'll be up. But look, Dmitry Kuzmin. There's going to be a lot of, and potentially,
like you said, it's going to be a much younger team. I mean, it was a young team last year, Dave, right? And it's going to be even younger with, like you said, Brad Lambert, Chaz Lucius.
Could be Danny Zhilkin. I mean, like, there's a lot of possibilities with and a lot of fun young prospects for Jets fans to come and watch at Moose games next season.
That's great news about CJ Cease. I don't want to make this the Ginsburg Moose Minute, but also I have some Moose news. Next week is the Hockey Manitoba HP1, HP standing for high performance. So that's the coaches who are trying to get to that top level. The keynote speaker will be Zinger. Craig Heisinger will be the keynote speaker of the Hockey Manitoba HP1 seminar at Canadians Polo Park. So that's a little Manitoba Moose news as it relates to my employer, Hockey Manitoba.
I was always more an A1 sauce guy than an HP sauce guy when it came to steak. I'm not sure if you guys had the same sort of thing growing up, but I was more of an A1. We were more of an A1 family than an HP family. But I think I digress a little bit on that front.
Drew, do you like Worcestershire sauce?
In a Caesar. I mean, it's not something I'm going around drinking on a regular basis or anything, but if I'm having a Caesar, which I don't regularly have, I'll add a couple drops of that to spice it up a little bit, along with.
I'm all about
Tabasco.
The sriracha. I mean, I could bathe in sriracha.
Okay, well, that's an image that none of us needed on this Saturday morning, so we'll move on with that. But what I wanted to say is, and it chagrins me to do this, but kudos to Dave Minuk for all the great interviews he's conducted at development camp this week, and those are all available both on our YouTube channel and on the website, illegalcurve.com. So if you need to catch up on any of the interviews that have been conducted with some of the young Jets prospects, you can check it out in both of those spots. And kudos to Dave for doing a good job there. Let me ask you guys this, as we were sort of talking about the Jets forward group for next year. One player that I think is really important that really is not getting any discussion this offseason, as far as I've heard, that's because he's under contract for another year, is Nino Niederreiter. I mean, Nino Niederreiter to me is a guy who's going to have a big impact on this Jets forward group next year. Now, he's not going to be the headline guy, but Nino Niederreiter is a guy that basically succeeds everywhere he goes in the NHL. At all of his different stops, he's been a successful component to a lineup, and he can play up and down the lineup. I see a lot of depth charts that have him more as a third line guy than, say, a top six guy. But I think that sort of speaks to the improved depth of the Jets, in that almost the second and third lines a little bit have some ability for guys to move up and down and really can be a little bit interchangeable as needed. But to me, and I wanted your guys' thoughts on this, Nino Niederreiter is a key member of the Jets forward group moving forward for next year.
Yeah, and I hate to pat myself on the back, but if you go back last summer, he was one of the players that I was hoping the Jets would sign in UFA. I'd have to go back and find the exact show, but the two guys that I singled out were Nino Niederreiter and Mason Marchment. Marchment obviously didn't have the best season with Dallas, but obviously before that he had his career year with the Florida Panthers. So Drew, how high I am on Niederreiter, not high on anything else, just high on Nito Niederreiter. So yeah, I thought, getting
wait till 10:15 tonight, and then we'll ask that question again.
No, but the fact that, what did the Jets give up? Was it a 4th round pick to get Nino Niederreiter? Wasn't it?
I thought it was a 2nd round pick, if I recall correctly. Dave's
saying 4th.
No, it was 2nd. It was 2024.
Okay, so sorry, that's my mistake.
Because that's, remember, they got that back in the trade for Dubois trade, yeah.
Right. So 2nd round pick in 2024 for Nino Niederreiter with an extra year left on his contract, I think still is an amazing feat by Chevy. It really is, right? And we talked about it, considering what they got for Tanner Jeannot from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I would argue that Niederreiter is a more impactful player than Jeannot. I like Jeannot; he's a good young player. But the fact that Jets didn't have to give up a roster player last year, I just thought it was worth Drew mentioning again how impressive that was to get Niederreiter for a 2nd round pick, and it wasn't even at the 2023 draft; it was the following year, right? So yeah, Niederreiter is a great player. I mean, he's an established NHL player. Like, he's a big guy. He's got a good shot. I think the thing with Niederreiter has always been, like a lot of NHL players that aren't 80+ point players, is that he can go cold. He can go for streaks where he doesn't produce a lot offensively. He's a guy that goes to the net hard. He's a guy that can finish checks. He's a pest. He's not at the same level as Brad Marchand. He's not at the same level as Matthew Tkachuk, but he has that element to his game, which I think Chevy likes, Rick Bowness likes. So yeah, I think Niederreiter could easily play on the wing in the top 6. He could easily play on the 3rd line, and I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the improved depth. Are you as good up the middle as you were last year? No, because you don't have Pierre-Luc Dubois up the middle. Pierre-Luc Dubois was the best player clearly in that trade, but Gabe Vilardi can obviously play 2nd line center. He can also play on the right side on the 2nd line, but there's options. Basically, you're looking at Cole Perfetti, Gabe Vilardi, or Vlad Nemestikov up the middle as it stands now. And then Niederreiter, yeah, he could play with Adam Lowry on the 3rd line, and maybe you've got Alex Iafallo there. Alex Iafallo is a left winger, right? So there's a lot of machinations here with the Jets. But yes, Niederreiter, Drew, is a guy that hasn't been talked about a lot. But yes, he will definitely play in the top 9. I can't tell you exactly, if he's going to play more on the 2nd line, with Gabe Vilardi, or maybe it's Cole Perfetti. I have no idea. Rick Bowness is obviously going to figure that out, in training camp and in the early part of next regular season. But there's no doubt that Niederreiter is going to be a key part of the offense and a key part of the Jets forward group. He's a good player. He's a veteran player that has a lot of experience. I don't know how many games. I'm going to guess, 400 or 500 games of NHL experience. He's a good player, and I really like that acquisition. I like that acquisition as much as I did the day that Chevy made it, and I think when he made that trade, we all liked it too.
810 games at the NHL level. So
there you go. So I was a little light there. I was light by 300 games.
It's okay. It's it was a good effort nonetheless. Dave, he's an interior player on a team that has too often been exterior players. And I mean, Mark Scheifele, I mean, he's of course
design show.
Well, no, it's not a design show. I'm not going to get into interior design talk.
Drew is a Photoshop enthusiast.
No, Dave is a Photoshop enthusitive. Dave is actually he's a terrorist when it comes to Photoshop.
Don't push me here, Drew.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
Dave can assassinate you with one image.
He has a database of photos that can be used for evil at the drop of a hat. Let me tell you, he looks like such a nice guy, looks like such a nice, friendly guy, but he will cut you with his Photoshop skills in the blink of an eye. He's absolutely reckless at times. But
Dave is a magician with that magic wand tool.
What I was saying is that on a team of exterior players, especially Mark Scheifele, who was the leading goal scorer on this team last year, Niederreiter should be as an example of where you need to go to score goals. Can you imagine Mark Scheifele's skill set if he wanted to be a more interior player as well? It would elevate his game even higher. It would elevate his impact even higher. That to me is, I mean, we've talked about this for years, so this isn't new territory we're hashing over. But if Mark Scheifele decides that he doesn't want to listen to Adam Oates anymore, he doesn't want to listen to the false prophet that has been Adam Oates and wants to be an interior player.
False prophet, Drew. Wow.
He would be an absolute he has the potential to be a dominant force at both ends of the ice if he actually wants to go to where the success usually happens.
Dave, wasn't the original name of our show the False Prophet Hockey Show?
I think that's exactly what it was called as. We do make a lot of false prophecy here on Illegal Curve Hockey. Yeah, I mean, Drew, yes, if Mark Scheifele played a different style of game, Mark Scheifele could be a much more effective player offensively and defensively, and we've talked about that for a long time. And again, I'm of the potentially naive opinion that if Mark Scheifele gets that long-term contract extension and never has to think about money, essentially, not that he does, making $6 million a year for the last 6 years, nobody's going to cry for him. But I think if he secures himself that long-term deal, this is perhaps a bit naive of me, but I do believe I think at that point, Mark Scheifele switches from, I need to be, earning 8, 9, 10 million a season to now I need to secure my legacy. Now I need to become the kind of player who secures a legacy. And you secure a legacy by doing what the Vegas Golden Knights did. Like Laurent Brossoit, his name is on the Stanley Cup. That to me is the legacy. It's not
Gary Lawless's name is on the Stanley Cup as well.
It was not. But the Vegas Golden Knights did. No, I know. But the Vegas Golden Knights did tweet out Gary's probably watching us right now. He's in Winnipeg at the Bomber game last night. Texted me if the show was on.
He stopped and got an Illegal Curve sandwich from Bernstein's.
But the fact of the matter is that's how you create immortality. You don't create it. Nobody says, hey, player X, that guy was amazing. He made $100 million in the NHL. But people can say, how many cups did that guy win? That's what people focus on. And Mark Scheifele is not an idiot. And I think Mark Scheifele is going to be adept enough to recognize that in order to create a legacy for himself, again, the millions and multi-millions of dollars isn't a bad legacy to create. But I just think that he'll desire that Steve Yzerman shift. The Steve Yzerman shift where he realized I could be an elite offensive player, but I need to be a defensive player. I need to change my style of game. Again, this is my own opinion. I'm entitled to it. I'm not saying that I'm right. A lot of people are going to think that I'm wrong, but I just think that you may see Mark Scheifele, it may not even be on the Jets, but you may see Mark Scheifele switch his focus and try and become that player because he realizes, hey, I can score 50 goals, but if I don't play offense and my team loses more games and we don't win a Stanley Cup, then again, my legacy is going to be of a guy will be a tarnished legacy, really, as opposed to a guy who is able to take his team over to that next stage, boys, and get them to being a Stanley Cup contender. Because if you're not, again, like I said, the hundreds of millions of dollars, that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be a Stanley Cup champion, and that'll live with you.
So you think, Dave, that could happen as early as this year because that next contract could be signed? Well, it could be signed today.
I do. I honestly, again, my philosophy is that if Mark Scheifele gets that extension, it doesn't have to. And to be honest with you, if I'm the Jets and I want to sign him to something, I would do it now because I would want him to have a different mindset coming into the season of again, like I said, of changing his style of game. Do Cats change their stripes? He's been in the NHL for 10 years, I see you shaking your head. You don't think it's possible?
Well, I think the question isn't will he? And so the thing is, yes, he could. We could talk about this all day long. He's 30 years old here. Yeah. And I always shake my head. I realize that Steve Yzerman is his favorite player, but he's not even close to being at that level where, Steve Yzerman was a guy that put up 120, 130 points, and he's a Hall of Famer and won multiple Stanley Cups. So I think all centers in the NHL wish they were Steve Yzerman. I think at 30 years old, Mark Scheifele isn't a poor defensive player. He's a horrible defensive player. Let's be honest here. Like Mark Scheifele scores 42 goals, puts up 80 points, 85 points, everything like that. We've been watching him since he entered the NHL. This is a guy who's lazy defensively. He's lazy defensively as the first line center in the NHL. So he has to come from being a lazy, poor defensive player to just being an average defensive forward. Forget about talking about him as being an elite defensive forward, Dave. He's coming from a position where on many plays, he just is lackadaisical defensively. He just doesn't put in the effort and he focuses more on the offensive side of the game. So yes, could he turn into a better defensive forward? Sure. But at 30 years old, why hasn't he turned into that yet? Like, is that going to happen this year all of a sudden magically? I think he probably will tell you that he wants to be a better defensive forward, but actions speak louder than words. And so I agree that it could happen, but the question is, will it happen? because if you look at his underlying advanced statistics defensively, he's awful.
I tried to. I was blinded.
They're so bad you kind of look directly at them like Voldemort.
Don't look at this. Don't look.
So that's all I'm saying. I mean, look, I have no problem with Scheifele defensively or as a person. I do have a problem with him defensively.
I don't
have a problem with him personally, but like, I mean, it's just like he has a long way to go, Dave, before we're talking about him being a good defensive forward. And I just haven't seen that. And we talk about it year after year. Scheifele's got to be better defensively. We've been talking about this for 5 years now, maybe longer than that. And so the thing is, he's got to make that determination, and he's got to show us on the ice, not talking about it with the media, not us talking about it. Like, he's got to do it. So yes, he's probably going to put up 80, 90 points. He might score 100 points this year. But I just don't see that, reliable defensive forward. Maybe it'll happen. We've seen flashes of it, but we definitely have not seen it over the course of the season. Yeah. And he's the only one that can change that. Nobody else. Adam Oates can't change that. Rick Bowness can't change that. Scheifele has to make that part of his game better.
Let's welcome to the program. He's the managing editor with the Hockey News. He's our very good friend, Michael Trakos, joins us on the show now. Michael, good morning. How are things? Nice to see you, old friend.
Hey, nice to be on. You guys can hear me okay?
We can hear you okay. You're coming through loud and clear. So hopefully the same with us to you.
Mike, I picked up this Jays hat yesterday just for you.
Yeah, I like that, man. That's like a little old school, isn't it?
If it was for Michael, you should have picked up a Pixies hat. That's what Michael's all about, is the Pixies, not the Jays. I mean, maybe you're about the Jays too, but I know you got the Pixies tattoo, right? I think I'm right on that one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just waiting for them to come on their next tour date. They didn't even come to Canada this time, so a little bummed about that.
The Pixies and Taylor Swift, they're both letting down Canadians left, right, and center.
In that case, Trudeau on that one as well.
Well, Mike, you might not believe this, but I think in August or September, Drew and his wife Laura have tickets to go see 50 Cent and Busta Rhymes in Winnipeg. That's not who you would probably guess Drew is a fan of, but yes, Drew's a big G Unit fan.
G Unit, nice, man.
I can assure you that I'm not. What I am is a good husband. My wife is a fan, and she said we're going, and I said all righty, let's go and have a good time, and that's what I'm all about. I will not be driving that night. We'll just
I bought Drew a 40 ounce of Old English just in advance so he can drink that before the concert.
Well, a few years ago, I saw Snoop Dogg with Wiz Khalifa on as part of their tour, and it was an outdoor concert, kind of similar to where Ezzy is at right now. And it was amazing to see like old school hip hop and new school. I guess I don't know if Wiz is new school anymore. He probably is old school. But it was, usually hip hop's hit or miss. Like usually live hip hop is like not the same as live rock and roll. There's a little like studio, magic that kind of gets lost with the live show, but I gotta say, like Snoop can deliver live. So we'll see. You gotta let me know how 50 Cent is.
I'll let you know. And just so we're clear, I'm gonna regain my credibility as a mid-40s sports journalist by seeing Springsteen in November, just so that I'm balancing everything out, and the world is still on its equilibrium.
You know what? It's so funny. I was on another podcast, and the guy was like, "So, what's your favorite Springsteen song?" And it's almost like you have to like Springsteen if you're a sports writer. Like, it doesn't matter if you cover hockey, baseball, football, whatever. If you don't like Springsteen, it's like you almost like you don't get to vote for year-end awards. You don't get in the press box anymore. So it's kind of weird that way. I wonder what the next generation Springsteen is going to be for like all the young guys here. It's like once he's gone, I don't know who that guy is who fills that void.
Well, hopefully we're all gone at that point in time too, because we'll be old geezers, and it's time for the next generation. At that point, Michael, obviously we didn't bring you on to talk music, but that has been a good intro so far, I would say. Let's talk about the NHL. Let's talk about free agency. Let's talk about the off season so far. You look back at July 1st. It was a week ago. To me, I think that even the worst move on July 1st, and there were some that were peculiar at best. I don't even think that the worst move is going to be nearly as damaging as some of the worst moves we've seen in previous years. Just sort of your thoughts on the general rationality that we saw on July 1st.
I didn't see a whole lot of crazy, to be honest, guys. I know Brad Treliving in Toronto was talking about prices being high, and I think that was in reference to the Leafs giving Ryan Reeves a 3-year deal. But you know what? I didn't see like crazy prices being paid. Like, I thought it was very sensible. If you weren't a Stanley Cup contender, you probably weren't making big moves. You could argue that some of the biggest moves were made by like the Chicago Blackhawks in terms of like kind of overpaying for guys. And it was just because, you know, the Blackhawks needed to get to the salary cap floor. So, you know, paying for Corey Perry, paying for Nick Foligno and Taylor Hall, they seem kind of outrageous, but when you look at their salary structure, it's kind of like, well, they almost had to do it. So still a lot of movements to be made. I was looking right before I joined you guys here. The fact that Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Kane, Matt Dumba, a lot of these star players are still available on the market. Kind of curious to see.
Tarasenko actually changed his agent an hour ago, Mike.
Are you being serious?
No, I'm just saying he's had 3 agents in the last 3 years. So just making a terrible joke.
No, he might as well. So I'm almost predicting like a busy end of July, maybe even August, where some of those kind of deals can be made. I know the Leafs typically, when Dubas was the GM, he liked to do a lot of his bargain kind of basement hunting at the end of the summer and getting guys on, you know, minimum contracts. So we'll see what happens, but. Yeah, it's not like I'm looking at the landscape right now saying, oh, wow, this team really shot out of the cannon because they got X, Y, and Z. I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop, especially with Winnipeg. Like I heard you guys talking about Scheifele just as I was joining you guys. I don't know if he's going to be in play, obviously, but with the contract expiring at the end of this year, he's a guy, obviously, that's going to get a lot of eyeballs on him as the season progresses. And then, obviously, Connor Hellebuck. I'm still waiting to see if he ends up as a New Jersey Devil or where he goes. And same thing with John Gibson. So the goalie market is still very much in flex in my mind.
Yeah, and you know, I agree with you in terms of free agency. I think you've seen less crazy contracts. Like in terms of, you know, I'll ask a question that's not Leafs related, but I told Drew and Dave, like, or at least I texted Dave, like, I actually like the moves the Leafs made. Like John Klingberg, 1 year, no problem with that. Max Domi, he's a guy that can play in your bottom 6. And obviously Tyler Bertuzzi, to me, is the type of player that any team would want. This is a guy that produced big time for some bad Wings teams. I don't think any of those contracts are bad contracts. I think, you know, Leafs fans might want an upgrade on defense and in goal. But I wanted to ask you about Erik Karlsson, because, you know, reports are that the Pittsburgh Penguins would like to land Erik Karlsson. Obviously, Kyle Dubas is, you know, putting his stamp on the team, and there might have to be some contract eaten there because he makes a lot of money. But I guess, what do you see happening with Erik Karlsson, and how could that impact a guy like Matt Dumba? Because Matt Dumba seems like a guy who's just, you know, waiting to sign with a team. But I feel like there could be a connection there. Maybe the Sharks move Karlsson and then maybe sign Matt Dumba. I'm just speculating here.
Yeah, they're different defensemen, but I hear what you're saying. You can either choose one or the other. Pittsburgh's a weird one for Erik Karlsson. You figure that team's aging out. Why would they need another kind of quote-unquote older defenseman to go along with, you know, a 35-year-old Crosby, 36-year-old Malkin, and Chris Letang, who unfortunately hasn't been able to stay really healthy over the years because of his heart issues. So it would almost be like they get, you know, Erik Karlsson just to make that final push to get one more championship. I don't know if that's the right move for Pittsburgh, and if that's the move that Kyle Dubas makes, I almost feel like he'd be getting kind of pushed into a corner into making it. I don't know who would be in the market for a Karlsson. Like, I keep thinking like a return to Ottawa makes so much sense just from an emotional level. I don't know if it makes sense from an actual team perspective. That being said, like, you know, if you've got a lot of those young defensemen on the team, who better than to kind of learn from than Erik Karlsson, who, you know, really was the last guy there, who took him to like conference final. I think they were 1 game, 1 goal away from going to the Stanley Cup final. And then basically the wheels fell off in that franchise. But yeah, he's an interesting target. Going back to the Leafs, I know there was some speculation that maybe Toronto was interested in Karlsson. Obviously, I think Klingberg is a much better option that way, just because, you know, it's a shorter term. He basically does what Karlsson does, but he doesn't come with that huge salary. So yeah, I really like what the Leafs were able to do this summer. I think day one, Treliving was just getting skewered because he didn't do anything, and it looked like Ryan Reeves was going to be his big move. But getting Domi and getting Bertuzzi, you get more grit. Like we said with Klingberg, I think you address some of the issues on the back end. Funny enough, like you have Morgan Riley on the back end, but one of the issues with Toronto was they can never score from the back end. They don't have that guy with the big shot. They really haven't had him since Brian McCabe. So to have a Klingberg back there, I don't know if he's going to play first unit power play, but it's just going to provide a little bit more boost offensively. And I still think in Toronto, though, everyone's still waiting for, see what Austin Matthews is going to sign for. They can get him signed up before the summer ends, and as well William Nylander. So until those two guys are signed, I still think a lot of Leaf fans are kind of waiting or holding out before they're saying, okay, Brad Treliving did a good job this year.
Michael, you talk about, being skewered for some of the moves, and one of those moves is Winnipeg's own Ryan Reeves and signing the deal with the Leafs. But, it's interesting because while some folks, pilloried it, Mark Mathot, former NHLer, he obviously was in favor. He said it would help that Toronto team. So what is your assessment as to what Ryan Reeves can do both on and off the ice for this Leafs team?
I think off the ice, Dave, is where Ryan Reeves is actually going to make a bigger impact than on the ice. I've been around this team, and I'm not going to say the team in the dressing room is as bad as it was back in the day when, you had very much cliques with like Darcy Tucker and Domi and Travis Green, and some guys weren't literally talking to other guys, or back in the Phil Kessel days where, you had Kessel, Phaneuf, you had Lupul, you had accusations of, off the ice stuff going on.
Malfeasance is the word you're looking for, I think.
I'm like looking for like another way of saying sexual stuff.
Just say malfeasance, and we'll be able to read between the lines.
Yeah, Mike, we don't want to get Drew too excited either.
Not as bad as that. That being said, this is a team, once they lost Jason Spezza, I think they lost a lot of leadership in that dressing room. I think they were really hoping that a guy like Ryan O'Reilly was going to stick around because he had a lot of sway in the room. I think Ryan Reeves is going to be huge in terms of off the ice. Like, he's immensely popular. I don't know how much you guys know about Reeves, but in Pittsburgh, he was a glue guy. In Vegas, he was a glue guy. And then you throw in the fact that this guy is arguably still the toughest guy in the NHL, someone that no one really wants to mess with. So he's going to provide a lot of physicality. He's probably going to find himself not playing every single game, but like I said, off the ice, in the dressing room, he's going to be huge, especially on road trips. I think having a Ryan Reeves there, and he's 37 years old, he signs a 3-year deal, so he's there to 40. If the Leafs go deep in the playoffs, chances are he's probably not even going to see any ice time in the playoffs. But like I said, off the ice, you talk to people in Pittsburgh and in Vegas, they'll tell you how valuable Ryan Reeves is.
Michael Trakos, our guest on the Illegal Curve the Illegal Curve hockey show on this Saturday morning. Easy enough for me to say. Michael, you look at the goaltending saga. I mean, here in Winnipeg, we know Connor Hellebuyck 1 year left on his deal. And then you have Frank Saravelli reporting that John Gibson has told the Ducks he's not going to play another game for them. Yet you have his agent, Kurt Overhart's, denying that. And there was a little bit of a back and forth between Frank and Kurt on Twitter as a result. If you were acquiring a goaltender, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck, everybody says still an elite goaltender. The numbers bear that out. Yet a lot of people say that John Gibson, despite having numbers that are not as good as they once were on a different team other than the Ducks, could regain that shape. If you had to take a flyer on one of the two, which one would you be taking a flyer on if you were acquiring a goaltender?
Give me Connor Hellebuyck any day of the week. The fact that
did you just put Connor Hellebuyck and John Gibson in the same? Sorry.
I'm just talking about in terms of Gibson.
Gibson's been awful the last few years.
I know, but there's a lot of people.
Here's the thing, Drew, and I like Gibson. I still think he can be an elite goalie on a good team. He just hasn't shown it. Like, he's never had that opportunity in the playoffs where really he's like taking a Ducks team to the promised land. And, you know, Connor Hellebuyck, almost like every year, he's in the mix for the Vezina. He had a really good run that one year with the Winnipeg where they lost to Vegas. I think this guy's been tested, and if we got a World Cup of hockey coming up, I think I'd rather have Hellebuyck in the net than Gibson. That's the guy I want. And you know what? And the fact that Hellebuyck wants out of Winnipeg, I know it hurts you guys, and you never want to hear that a player doesn't want to play for his team. But all I'm hearing right now is this guy wants to win a championship, and he's looking around him saying, you know what? It's not going to happen in Winnipeg. This team is going in a different direction, and it's probably the right direction when you take everything into consideration. So the fact that Hellebuyck doesn't want to be there for a rebuild, I don't fault him for that. All I see is a guy that wants to win. And if I'm a championship contending team, that's the guy I want in net right now. I think Connor Hellebuyck, you know, next year, if he lands in a good spot, if he's in New Jersey, or I'm trying to think what other teams are really in the mix for him, but I would pencil him in as a top 3 candidate for a Vezina next year.
Yeah, you know, I worded that question terribly, so I'm not comparing John Gibson and Connor Hellebuyck. That was
they
my
do get
bad.
compared a lot, Drew. It's not like it's a bad comparison, really. Like I said, when you're drawing up a list of the top U.S.-born goaltenders in the NHL right now, it probably is Hellebuyck and Gibson, who are probably going to be duking it out for the net. Like I said, the next Olympics or next World Cup, and
what I meant to really ask is
numbers. You could make that argument that you throw Gibson in Winnipeg for the last few years, and you put Hellebuyck in Anaheim, and maybe Hellebuyck's numbers don't look so great. Like that is an awful team. I don't even know who's on defense on that team that's really kind of helping out a Gibson. So I kind of almost feel sorry for the kind of spot he's been put in.
What I really meant to ask is, would you consider acquiring Gibson at a fraction of the cost instead of Hellebuyck at the higher
Well, that's why his
cost?
contract is awful, Drew. He makes $6.4 million. Gibson, I'm talking about, for the next 4 years.
Right.
That's why I don't think there's any trade market for him.
Well, but if it's available as a salary dump, or if it's available at a very low cost and you're counting on a bounce back, would you be willing to take that risk? I shouldn't have even brought Connor Hellebuyck into the equation, to be perfectly honest. It was a terribly worded question on my part.
Yeah, if you can send the guy back, like the Leafs have Matt Murray. If you could send Matt Murray back for Gibson as part of the package that gets worked out, then yeah, for sure. Because Gibson still has the tools, I think, there. I still think it's a product of the environment more so than it is the goaltender. As to why his numbers are the way they are. Like I said, it can't be easy playing for the Anaheim Ducks team. And, you know, Winnipeg hasn't been the greatest team also, but you know, they got Josh Morrissey. They have a stacked forward lineup. And I know, like, here's the thing with Connor Hellebuyck that I really like is the guy's a horse. Like, you know how many games he plays a year. Basically, he's like the second coming of Marty Brodeur in the sense that he just wants to be in the net every single game. And, you know, that just speaks to the competitor that he is. Like I said, he wants to play for a championship team going forward now. I think he's paid his dues as long as he could in Winnipeg. That was a team that was, you know, penciled in for a championship for the last several years. Weren't able to get the job done, and now they're going in a different direction with Blake Wheeler gone, Pierre-Luc Dubois gone, and we'll see what happens with Scheifele before the end of the year. So I don't fault Hellebuyck for wanting to jump ship as well.
And
I'm
just
going to not
further
talk for the rest. I'm going to not talk for the rest of the interview. After
it's
that.
fine,
ahead,
Drew. I mean, you like.
Drew, who's a better goalie now, Matt Murray or Gibson? Come on, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have that.
Just leave me alone. Leave me alone.
The original
please.
North American Team North American goalies there.
And Mike, I wanted to ask you about a different team, but
50 Cent over here.
I wanted to, yeah, exactly. Let's just listen to your G Unit on repeat, Drew. But you know, and especially with Troy Terry and Trevor Zegras need new contracts, and Leo Carlson. I mean, it's not like he's going to step in and save the Ducks. And then you've got Pavel Mintyukov, defenseman who they drafted last year. But the Ducks are at least 3 or 4 years away from being a decent team. I think you'd agree, Mike. So that's complicating things to make a trade for the Ducks. But I wanted to ask you, just kind of looking overall picture with free agency, like, and I think the most impressive move the Colorado Avalanche made was not in free agency, but I've been very impressed with what they've done. And, I'm a Devils fan, and some people criticize the Miles Wood move, maybe giving him too many years or too much money. But I look at, the second line center role, and that's been kind of the main, area of concern after Nazem Kadri went to the Calgary Flames, right? You bring in Ryan Johansson, and you can say whatever you want about Ryan Johansson, but having him as a 2C behind Nathan McKinnon, and I realize there's question marks like what's happening with that situation with Valerie Nichushkin, for example, but you bring in Miles Wood, Ryan Johansson, you move Alex Newhook, you get a few draft picks. Like, I look at the Colorado Avalanche, I still see them as the top team in the Western Conference. Maybe that's just me, but I really like the work that Joe Sakic has done.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ezzy. I think last year was a bit of a blip. They had some nasty injuries that just they couldn't overcome. I think the goaltending, that was an area where Georgiev just, we said that you didn't need a goaltender, or the Avalanche proved that you don't need an elite number one goalie to win a Stanley Cup, because they did that with Darcy Kemper. But, Kemper was probably a little bit of an upgrade over Georgiev. And the injuries, like I said, hurt them. Makar was in and out of the lineup. Landeskog, we know what happened to him. I think Rantanen missed some time as well. And then Nichushkin in the playoffs with the off-ice stuff with the hotel and his girlfriend or friend that was a girl. I don't know. I don't want to speak too much on the details because they are
lady friend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a team that I would probably say out of the West, I would even put them ahead of Vegas going forward next season, just because like when you got McKinnon, you got Makar, and you got Rantanen, those are three great pieces. I'm not sold. I don't know how you guys feel about Ryan Johansson. You think he's a solid guy to play behind McKinnon? I don't think so at all. I think Ryan Johansson peaked 5 or 6 years ago, to be honest. I've heard some things about him off the ice even. I don't see him as a guy that's going to play a significant role there. I could be wrong, but I'm not sold at all on Ryan Johansson. So that's
fair. It's fair enough, Mike, because I mean, you're right. Let's be honest. I mean, considering what was he drafted? 6th overall, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check. 4th overall back in 2010. I don't know if he's ever lived up to being a top 5 pick. And you're right. There have been questions about his dedication, work ethic, stuff off the ice. But I just think that's an upgrade. Like Alex Newhook, I think has a bright future ahead of him. And then that's obviously why Montreal acquired him after they couldn't get Dubois. But I just think, Johansson gives you a solid veteran up the middle. He's not perfect. I would rather have Nazem Kadri, to be honest with you, over Ryan Johansson. I just think he solidifies that second line center role. But I agree with you. I mean, maybe he's not going to reach the heights that we expected him to reach, 4 or 5 years ago.
No. And with Kadri, at least if he's not producing points, he can be a real pain in the butt to play against. Johansson, I don't think brings that same sort of snarl. We saw it a bit when Nashville went all the way to the final. Him and Kessler were battling it out in that series against Anaheim. But man, that's a long time ago, guys. And really since then, Ryan Johansson has just been basically a number 3 center with the kind of production that he's been putting up. Like, he doesn't score goals. He's a bit more of a playmaker in that regard. So it might depend on who he sees some time with on the Abs. If they decide to split up McKinnon and Rantanen, maybe he sees some time with Rantanen. And, if you're playing with Mikko, I could play center and probably put up like 60 points. That's a good of a winger that Mikko Rantanen is. So, still for me, it's a curious move. I was kind of surprised that they didn't take a run at Matt Duchene and try to bring him back. Maybe it was just too sour from the last time he was there, because from what I heard, that wasn't a good experience also with the Abs. But with all the options out there, I wouldn't have gone after Ryan Johansson, especially if I'm penciling the Colorado Avalanche as a Stanley Cup team. I don't see him being the missing piece to get him there. And
sorry, before Dave gets in here, I'll just quickly say the guy that I really was thinking would be a perfect fit there is the other Ryan O'Reilly. That's the guy that I was thinking going back to Colorado. If we're talking Ryan O'Reilly, okay, then, that's exactly who they need. But I agree with you, Mike. There's definitely something underwhelming about Ryan Johansson still at this point in his career.
I'll be honest. I almost forgot he was in the league, guys. Like I thought like maybe injuries had like rendered him as a guy that just didn't even play. Like I was looking him up as you were talking there, Ezzy, and like, hey,
he had a bad year last year for sure.
He never stays healthy now. Like 55 games last year, fine 79 the year before, then 48 the year before that. I don't know if that was a COVID year. The only reason he played 48, but yeah, he doesn't put up good points. Like 28 points in 55 games last year and a minus 13. That's the guy that you're aiming for in free agency. I just don't see it. Maybe Joe Sakic sees something in him that I don't, but very underwhelmed with that pick.
Michael, from a team that's making moves to one that isn't, what is going on in Calgary? Or what isn't going on in Calgary?
I honestly don't know. When they made that trade last year, like we were sitting here around this time last year going, Calgary won that trade. Florida, what a dumb move. They gave up Uyghur and Huberdeau and a pick for Matthew Tkachuk. Calgary's going to go all the way. That's a team that's going to challenge Edmonton in a good way next year. And man, it just completely fell flat. And now you're looking at that team in a similar vein as you're looking at Winnipeg going, okay, what direction are they going now? Is it time to sort of maybe not blow things up, but really take a hard look at what direction you should be going in? So whenever you're playing in a division with the Oilers, it's going to be tough because I think the Oilers are, they're probably, I would put them right behind Vegas as to top teams in the Pacific. And that Pacific is just a weak division. Like, I guess LA is still going to be hanging around there and competing, but San Jose's garbage, Anaheim's garbage, Vancouver, I don't think they're going to make a push. Maybe it's going to come down to Vancouver and Calgary as to who the next big Canadian team is out of the Pacific. But very, very, very puzzling as to what direction the Calgary Flames are going to be heading in this year. I heard that True Living might have gone back to the well and tried to take a bunch of guys with him when he came to Toronto. We haven't seen that, which maybe speaks to the fact that he doesn't want any of the guys that he saw last year with the Flames, and I don't blame him.
Michael, last one for you. What happens with William Nylander this offseason?
I think there's a very good possibility, Drew, that he gets traded. I think the number he's looking at and what the Leafs are wanting to sign him at are so drastically different that I think the only solution really is that Nylander gets moved and he gets the money elsewhere. I don't think the Leafs have any interest in overpaying for Nylander and giving Matthews what he wants, and then having to think that, whatever Nylander gets and whatever Matthews gets, well, then you got to give Marner that whenever his contract comes up. So I think the longer this drags on, the greater the possibility that William Nylander is no longer a Maple Leaf. As to where he ends up, stay tuned, because it could literally be anywhere based on where the money is going to be. So, that's going to be a real difficult one. I think with the Leafs still, what they need is a defenseman more than they need another scoring winger, especially a streaky scoring winger, and Nylander. And the more I think about it, the more I can see him getting moved and a defenseman coming in.
Between my shitty John Gibson question and the fact that Ginsburg just took a bite of a sandwich in the middle of an interview, let it not be said that this is the most professional operation you've ever appeared on. Michael Tracos, managing editor for the Hockey News. Good to see you, buddy.
I'm hungry, Drew. We're talking about hockey for 2 hours here. I got to have a bite of my breakfast sandwich.
That's terrific, Ezzy. We're all very proud of you. Michael, thank you. Our apologies again for having to put up with us for as you've done so many times over the years.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. And it looks like it's beautiful weather up there. You're in Winnipeg, right, Ezzy? Like you didn't.
No, I'm actually. I'm about an hour and a half northeast. I'm in Lac du Bonnet. It's my wife's family's cottage out here. So like the eastern, not too far actually from the Ontario border, out here in the Canadian Shield. Dave knows how beautiful it is out here in Nopaming Provincial Park. But I think it's beautiful in Winnipeg as well. Drew wouldn't know because he's in his basement bunker. Mm-hmm. But I believe the weather is nice across most of southern Manitoba.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the summer, guys. Like I said, there's a lot of free agency moves to be made, so I don't think you're going to be taking too much vacation.
Probably not. Michael, be well. We'll do it again real soon, buddy. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
There he goes, Michael Tracos joining us. Let's go to break for one final time. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Finally, an articulate Ginsburg is going to be on the show. No matter, we don't have to listen to Ezzy chewing any longer. We can have Ruben on the show, and we're all going to be better off for it.
Ruben's currently giving me hand sanitizer, so I'm cleaning my hands, right, Rube?
That's good. He should always, that should just be his permanent job, just sort of walking around you at all times, sanitizing you. Maybe you can get it like in a hose where he just sort of spray you down constantly.
And you did, you know that, Drew.
Yeah, with sanitizer. I do enjoy, as I was sort of laughing about it during the interview with Michael, that the way the shadows were hitting Ginsburg, the only part of him that we could see was his mouth. Everything else was in shadow. He sort of looked like one of those, like if you're watching Dateline or 2020 and they're blurring the face out of somebody except for their mouth. It sort of was a good look for you, Ezzy. I like that. The majority of your face being in the shadow, and
nobody needs to see my face, Drew. So this
nobody
works
needs
perfectly,
to see it, especially when you're chewing.
You just need to see Ruben's face. That's all that matters.
Yeah, certainly the far better of the Ginsburg options on this Saturday morning. Dave M's going to have the latest from development camp all throughout the day on illegalcurve.com, also on our YouTube channel. So you can look forward to that. Dave doing a great job covering development camp in its entirety. And then, of course, after today, we're still going strong. We go strong all through the end of July. But the Jets, I think we're going to quiet down a little bit. But you never know. Will there be a late July surprise when it comes to Scheifele or Hellebuck or the logjam on the back end? If there is, Dave M will have it covered for illegalcurve.com. Isn't that right, Mr. Manuk? You're just giving me a thumbs up. You're not even going to come on the mic. Just giving a solid thumbs up at this point in time. Fair enough. I can accept that. Ezzy is doing a great job down at Lac du Bonnie as well. So if you're out there and you're looking to hit him up, he said that he's got an open bar available. So you can be sure to
meet me at Trappers. Let's go get some ice cream at Trappers on Highway 315.
There you go, as he's buying, everybody. So good luck with all that. Want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors who make this show, to make the post-game show during the season, who make the website a possibility. We mentioned Rumors and Linden Market Dental Center and Zappia Group Realty. You can't forget about Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg. If you happen to be enjoying an alcoholic beverage or two on this fine weekend, please do so responsibly. We need you back here next Saturday, healthy and fit and ready to join us as we do each and every Saturday with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback here, there, everywhere. We want to know what you think of this fine programming. Please forget my lousy question and Ginsburg's propensity to eat a sandwich on air, and think about all the good things that we at Illegal Curve do for you.
Drew, before we wrap up, who are you most excited to see at Folkfest?
I have absolutely no idea who any of the performers are. All I know is that it's a lovely way to spend a Saturday. So that's my wife and I are going to take the kids out to Folkfest. You know, I'm not a big music guy in general, despite the conversations on today's show. But
Vance Joy is the headliner, I believe.
I don't know that we're going to be there late enough tonight to see the main stage performances. But all I know is that when you go to the Folk Fest, even if you've never heard of the performer, they're all fantastically talented musicians. So I'm looking forward to just spending a nice day listening to some good music and sort of introducing my kids to the Folk Fest experience. Because I think it's just a great thing that happens here in the summer each and every year. But if you're in the city and you're looking for something to do today, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has two shows tonight, 7:15 p.m. and 9:45. So be sure to check that out. Want to say a big thank you to everyone who joined us, also Murat Atesh and Michael Tracos, in case you missed any of the show. The immediate replay is on our YouTube channel. And of course, the podcast will be available just as soon as Dave M does his fine work in getting that posted. We'll be back next Saturday, 9 a.m. for another edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Of course, if news breaks throughout the course of the week, illegalcurve.com. And also,
sorry. Ruben, I'm going to help you put on the sunscreen. Okay, you're putting on too much. I'm watching Ruben on the deck here, putting on sunscreen, and he has put way more sunscreen than he should. Like, you should see his legs. Like, there's 5 times as much. So I think we better wrap up here because I got to help Rube out with his sunscreen application because he's basically used half the bottle here.
Why don't you go take care of that? I was wrapping up until you interrupted me with the breaking sunscreen related news, but I appreciate it nonetheless because I can imagine that there's a lot of sunscreen.
Too much. That's too much. Give Mummy some of that or give Ariella some.
Alrighty, I think on that note, Dave, do you have anything else to add, or we're ready? Dave's like, yeah, let's just get done with this damn show. Be well, everyone. Be safe. Enjoy your weekend. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow @Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.